awesome, fabulous lady. I always call lady queens. So this is another wonderful queen that we're going to be interviewing today. And you're going to find out a lot of information about this lady. You're just going to be like, wow. So first, let me introduce her properly. Jacqueline Lulu Brown, fondly known as Lulu, is a dynamic woman who spent over 38 years in the information technology and engineering arena. During that time, she held technology, management, and executive leadership roles, which allowed her to travel throughout the world to numerous countries that included the UK, Australia, Israel, France, Germany, Spain, and India. One of the things that Lulu discovered during her career and travels was that women in their career, business, and their faith-based organizations were feeling the heavy burden of silencing carrying their unsaid. Now, as a transformational speaker, elevation leader, women empowerment counsel, mentor, and licensed minister, she's spoken, coached, and mentored women and young girls across the world, including India, the UK, Australia, Israel, Spain, and the British Islands. Lulu's purpose and focus with her business, Revolution Ascension LLC, is to provide a safe place to open, honest, and raw conversation. Well, Lulu, oh my God, thank you so much. You're awesome. Just reading your bio. You are awesome. How are you this morning?
I'm good, Barbara. Thank you. How are you?
I am fabulous, fabulous. Thank you again for coming on to celebrate you sharing Saturday and just sharing your wonderful gifts that you have and your background. And this is going to be tremendous. We have we want to really unpack some things about you so people get to know you even more than just the bio that I read.
Thank you.
So let's just get right into it. Now, it said that you have 30 plus IT experience and leadership under your belt. What made you transition to create the Revolution Ascension for the professional women?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded one. Barbara, it has always been in my DNA. What I do now, as I think back, I've really always done it. It's part of how I got the name Lulu. As a child, I was named after the endearing character Little Lulu. And that character was sort of always, it was Lulu and her gang, always doing something with people to other children. And it was always around a project or fixing or something that most found to be annoying, but she was a very persistent character. And so what I do today has always been in my DNA from childhood. And no matter what my career was, it was always there. And in my adult life, in my later adult life, as I became more involved in ministry, it blossomed more. And I found myself actually showing up in my true gifting after so many years of just it being your career. Yeah. And you're excelling in your career. But then I started noticing the needs that professional women had. And everything that I'm doing right now, I actually did during my career. So it's kind of like having two jobs. And so during that time of doing what I'm doing right now, as well as the technology piece of it, it all started there. So it was logical that when I retired out of technology, that I would just evolve and do this full time.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you can bridge, your skills and everything that you did for, in the technology arena with the women and everything, and then put it into your passion. And now you're just doing it full blown. So really awesome. That's great.
Thank you.
So I was going to say, we know that there are many coaching and programs available right now, especially for women. What is the uniqueness concerning your coaching compared to others?
Well, and I often say Revolution Ascension is not just a mantra. It's not just your average, excuse me, not just your average women's group. What we do and what makes us unique is that we go to what I call the core, the root, and the heart of the matter with women. And one of the reasons what made me so passionate about this is that during my professional career, I found that women would succeed, even such as myself, but I found that we really weren't at what I call that limitless place. We were not ascending to our very highest self, because a lot of times worldly success or corporate success kind of has its own definition. But there's a whole nother level of ascension, growth, being your highest self as a woman. That's a whole nother level and a different plateau. So, we often stop down at a lower level and plateau, but there's something even higher and greater. And that's what makes us different, because to get to that place takes a different type of work.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
takes more of a understanding our root challenges and where they come from. And then it also takes us being brave enough to go that deep. Speak your unsaid. Those things that we should talk about, but we really don't talk about.
Mhm.
Those things that we need to talk about, but for a number of reasons, it really never gets surfaced.
Yeah.
And so it's going to that level. And part of it in the beginning is what I call coming out of the matrix. Because as women, our worldview in some cases has been shaped for us. And we can be successful and we can be excelling, but there's always greater than that. And that awakening of coming out of that matrix and discovering things about ourselves that we never knew. They're there, but we haven't necessarily done the level of work to discover those additional things. So we have gifts and genius and brilliance in us that no matter what age, we haven't even tapped into yet.
Yeah.
So it's going that deep, tapping into those things. And then when you tap into those things, sometimes we find those areas where we need some transformational healing.
Mhm.
Because sometimes what prevents us from going to that next level could be something that we just need to uncover and deal with.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. It doesn't mean that we're broken. Actually, it means the opposite. It means that there's greatness in us. It means that we are these extraordinary, unique beings that are created. And so, in that uniqueness that our creator, or whether you call God, but there's that special uniqueness. And it's finding that additional greatness, I like to say. And it's uncovering it and discovering it and going through whatever healing that may have prevented us from even seeing it.
Yeah.
And then from there, it is true ascension while we are here. People think of ascension like, oh, well, what does that mean? You can live an ascended life right here on earth. Doesn't mean that we're ascending into this, like we're trying to be God or we're trying to be, Jesus, because people have asked me, what are you really saying when you say ascension? I am saying that we can live a greater, richer, more fulfilled life than we even experience right now.
Mhm.
There's no limit. Success, we define it, not, what the world says, but we define our own individual success.
Mhm.
And it just keeps going higher and higher. So there is an ascension path right here of traveling through those different dimensions, what I like to say. And so when you're doing that, that's different, it's unique. And the outcomes that you experience are the growth and truly living your best life and ascending to your highest self. that you may have not ever even tapped into, didn't know it was really there.
Wow. Awesome. So yeah, I always say that it's very important to, like you said, dig and see, the individual, what's going through, because how are they going to move and transform if you don't do that, just digging and then really seeing what that person really is and moving them forward. So that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a good way to take it when you are, it's a uniqueness, like you said, with your coaching.
And it's a beautiful experience. It's
Just to
like,
see it flourish.
and it's like opening a gift. It's
Yeah.
unwrapping ourselves.
Mhm.
So it's just like peeling off and pulling the wrapping paper off and really looking down in and saying, oh, look at this beautiful gift. I
Mhm.
didn't know I had that. I didn't know that that was there. But there's a level of work that
Yeah.
we do to uncover all that.
And yeah, and I'm glad that you take that time for them, because people need to do that in order to move forward and what their really true gift is. So that's awesome. That's awesome. So let's see. Under your Facebook business page, you mentioned the term limitless. What does that mean, and how do you incorporate that into the teaching within your like virtual training?
So I love to challenge the cliche we've all heard. The sky is the limit. When we were younger, oh, you could do anything, honey. The sky is the limit. But just that comment within itself, I've determined is contradictory, because it's telling you that there's a limit. The sky is the limit. And I
Mm.
know it's well intended. We all know that. But I challenge it and I say, there is no sky. And there really are no limits except the ones we set for ourselves. So, okay, people say, well, it's just a saying. Well, our words are powerful. And one of the things that we do in Revolution Ascension, which is very different, is we go through a phase of studying and learning etymology, which is the origin of words, the power of our words. And there is a very deep spiritual component, and that's where the limitless comes in. Because regardless of your faith, it does not make it, because I'm not a proponent of religion, because I think religion is something that confines and does put limits. But
Mm.
our creator and God is limitless. And if one is to believe that we are created
Mhm.
by this great limitless God or being or creator, then why would we have limits?
Mm.
So we set limits because, again, what I call, the indoctrination of the matrix, it's a
Mhm.
mindset. So when we say limitless, it's finding what is limitless, your own limitless. It's an individual thing. And as we're uncovering that, you discover that, wow, there really are no limits except the ones that I, as an individual, set. And
Mhm.
we tap into that power because it is a power and
Yeah.
it's given to each and every one of us. We just have to understand it and we just have to tap into it. So there is no sky and there are no limits. And that is incorporated into what it is that we do in the Ascension Academy. And some of it is simple and basic, but some of it is deep and spiritual. And it's a discovery phase. It's a journey that we go on to come out as our limitless self.
Awesome. So with your group coaching, it's becoming more of the norm right now. So how does your program work, and how can any individual get the full benefit attention from the group platform? So sometimes, in a group, some people might not feel like they're getting their attention. How do you kind of work that in?
So with the group, the Ascension Academy is where we do the group, what I like to say, empowerment. I do truly believe that coach is an overabused word. So I like to say empowerment consulting, because what we're doing is really providing a consultancy to a woman. And we're just guides that take women through a process. There's a blueprint and a process. And being a technology person, I'm able to relate things like the software development lifecycle. And there's terms. We have something called DevOps. These are all technical terms. And they innovate and bring really great technology solutions. And I just take that and I take those processes and sort of flip them on a deep inner spiritual human side. And we go through those processes and we find that we are literally innovating all of these wonderful things that we've discovered about ourselves. So that is what's happening in the Ascension Academy as a group. But again, I like to call it empowerment versus coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get to the individual piece, and you're absolutely right, everyone is not comfortable with when you hit that deep area. Everyone's not comfortable doing that in a group setting. So one of the benefits of the Ascension Academy is you do get one-on-one sessions with myself. Those are bonuses. So everyone gets a number of bonus VIP one-on-one sessions with myself. Now, in addition to that, aside and above and beyond the Ascension Academy, I do provide one-on-one VIP for folks that say, I never want to be in with a group. I want to start out with just dealing with just me. I don't want to have to yield my time to someone else. So I do provide the VIP one-on-one, but you get a level of that even in the Ascension Academy.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you have both, just in case people have to go, like you said, a little deeper. They did that one-on-one interaction. So yeah, and you're right. Coaching has been like the normal wording lately. So I'm glad. I like the empowerment of what you use. So that's a better way to kind of describe what you do, and it makes you unique. It makes you unique in that area. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So I wanted to say some of the virtual training topics that I noticed that's on your website, like losing mama, post-traumatic slave syndrome, also known as PTSS, and then what's behind your mask, what's your unsaid, creates a lot of questions. Can you give the background on how you arrived to these topics to include in your program?
Very transparent. It was taking and developing the blueprint from my life, from what I was going through.
Okay.
I lived behind a mask. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be successful by world standards. And that's great career, traveling all over the world, high flying, C-suite technology executive, and, husband, house, car, purses, bags, shoes to match. We place a lot of times so much on what does it mean to be successful. And behind all of that, there's not always bad stuff behind the mask. Sometimes there's great stuff. Sometimes we're just not living and walking in our highest self because we've got all these gifts and all these abilities that are above and beyond what we've already accomplished. There's this greatness that isn't even tapped into. So that's part of that was behind the mask. And then sometimes there can be pain. There can be things, and I call it the unsaid. Those unsaid things that we have never talked about, we have never uncovered, but they're buried deep. But they also, even though they're buried, sometimes they prevent us from actually ascending to our own individual limitless place. So that's where behind the mask. Losing Mammy is a revelation that was downloaded to me from and it's very, I'm going to say, focused on women, but there's a component that focuses specifically on women of color, African American women, and spending so much time in India, Indian women, so I say women of color. And there are things that we have experienced from childhood as women overall, and then culturally, when you look at the culture of how women were reared and what has shaped our worldview, there is what I call mammy syndrome. And mammy syndrome the root of mammy syndrome is post-traumatic slave syndrome. Things that happened generations ago, and they show up in our lives as women and how we allow people to treat us, what we think of ourselves, how we determine our self-worth. And even though we may not look like mammy per se, meaning we don't have, this, what back then was determined like as a rag, they didn't call it a scarf, a rag tied around our head, and just kind of being everything to everyone, but neglecting yourself. So we may not have that physical look. However, we show up with that, we just look different. So I could be suffering from mammy syndrome, and I don't have to look like mammy, but mammy is showing up in me in a different way, but it's there. So it's really, one, it's enlightenment, and it's really coming to terms with asking some questions about why and how we do things, and why we do the things we do in our cultures individually and as women collectively. And it's really coming to that understanding and having the courage to say, you know what? There's some things that I can lose. That's why it's called losing mammy. And some of that starts with a simple sentence, and that is the word no. Some of that is learning that when you're everything to everyone and you're neglecting yourself, that's not self-love. So part of losing mammy is really going deep and understanding what is self-love. It's really defining it. And then looking at, well, what does that mean for me as an individual? So that's where some of those come from. But there's this blueprint, and I truly believe, and this is my personal, I'll say, mantra, is that what I have been here to learn, every experience, every challenge, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and believe you me, I've had all three, good, bad, and ugly. But
I'm right with you.
Yes, but through all of that, everything that I went through, what I'm here to teach, I've lived, breathed, and learned myself. And I developed my blueprint. I developed the process. So what I take women through is not something that I don't identify with. Now, unfortunately, I identify with some things that I say, God, I wish I couldn't, or I didn't. But it was my life at that time. And there's always someone that needs what we have to offer. Maya Angelou often would say in her speaking, and I heard her tell a story about someone that was the rainbow in her cloud when she was young. And then at the end, she said, now go. And she looked out into the audience, and we were just like glued in amazement to everything that we heard her speak. And she said, now go and be the rainbow in someone else's cloud. And so a lot of what I'm doing is being the rainbow. We've all had cloudy days. I still have cloudy days, but now I have a process that I've taken myself through, and I can continue to perfect even more. So that's where a lot of that comes from.
Wow. I love about the quote with the rainbow, because, being that rainbow, being that hope, I call it too, in people's lives is so important, so important. So with, see, time always goes so quickly when I'm interviewing these awesome queens, but I want to end it with you, just asking you, just real quickly, what kind of final words would you want to give the audience at this time?
Well, We know that we're in this time of COVID-19. And what I would like to say is to stay on the path of innovation. And we often think of that as technical, but every day we should be innovating ourselves. So I would encourage every woman to continue to look at ourselves, innovate ourselves, look at all of the different things that we can come out on the other side of this in a positive manner. We're going through a painful time, loss of life, loss of loved ones, our health being challenged, careers, businesses, regardless of whether it's a business or your career, there's a risk because big business is even at risk. So I would say to not focus on those things that are being thrown at us that are negative. What's happening in the stock market, up today, down tomorrow, sideways the next day, but focus on, it's not selfish to focus on ourselves and continuously innovate ourselves and look for those gifts that are down there. Look for the genius and the brilliance. And I love those words. My favorite words, I am, again, being a studier and a teacher of etymology, words are powerful. And I do believe that the words we put out into the universe and the atmosphere, the universe responds. Yes, our creator responds to those words. Yes. So look for the genius, the brilliance that's down, the gifting that is down in every one of us that we haven't even tapped into yet. And come out on the other side of this to utilize all of those gifts and that brilliance and that genius and soar and ascend to the highest place for us as an individual, because there is no sky and there are no
limits. I knew that was coming. Well, Lulu, it was just awesome to interview. It's just always an honor. And thank you so much for being on Celebrate You interview for Spotlight. And again, please, we will make sure that you all get Lulu's information to get to her. And if you want to, she has a lot of gifts, a lot of things that she could, give to you and other women out there that's needed. So with that said, thank you again, Miss Jacqueline Lulu.
Thank you. You are such a beautiful spirit, Barbara. And I wanted to say to you, I love your recordings and your lives and your inspirational and motivational. Your words help to remind me to continue to dig, because there's still some gifts that are still down in there. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That's why we draw to each other. And that's what the wonderful part about collaborating and being together as women like ourselves. So thank you. I appreciate you so much.
You're welcome.
So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again at another interview. Again, like what you said, remember, life is not limitless. I love what Lulu says. So remember that. Reach for what you need to reach for in your life, because you have that gift to do that. Thank you again.